Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could teach the gullible to never be so comfortable with lies they eat like comfort food? To disregard the bogus claims and pseudoscientific claims. Can you imagine just how much indeed the world would change? No more political predators playing on the populace with ilkas and plots to shift and kill metropolis. No more villains with the title in the Bible holding phony temper Bibles like the stuff they teach is vital. Imagine it was normal to have to prove a claim you make. And folks really feel ashamed to express some content that was fake. It's not to say we never make mistakes. It's just to say we go out of our way to show the evidence it takes.
Remain skeptical while you travel the road. The reason stay strapped with logic and facts. That's what it is, yo. Keep reality intact to help the truth grow. Question every claim, especially the ones you believe in. Remain skeptical while you travel the road. The reason.
Reason. I'm Rick Wingrove.
And I'm David Tamayo, President of Hispanic American Freethinkers.
Today is Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Special,
Rick, you've been a mother to me. You've been like a mother to me. When it comes to atheism, you have, actually.
And you're like the Hispanic brother I never had. So.
Spoken like a true Texan.
Thank you, thank you. So anyway, yeah, it's Mother's Day, which I learned earlier is not a made-up holiday. That's Valentine's Day. So.
Oh, really? Mother's Day is not made up.
And of course, today we're going to be talking about the appalling decision by the Supreme Court this week to basically, I don't know, maybe I overstate it, but I believe we're now a theocracy. So
yes, and I think that's the main topic we're going to talk about today is that we are one step closer to a theocracy. If those that believe in that the dead can turn in their graves, we have Jefferson and Madison also doing that in their tombs. But I'd like to read a little bit of that, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead.
So, so this week, the United States welcomed an old form of government, as you mentioned, theocracy. The U.S. Supreme Court this week upheld the practice of public prayer before local government meetings, rejecting arguments overwhelmingly Christian invocations violate the Constitution prohibition. And this decision was made along party lines, 5-4, and this was in the case of Greece, New York. He said that Kennedy said that although most of the prayers givers were Christian, the fact reflects that only the predominantly Christian identity of the town's congregation is what is being shown here rather than an official policy.
And so, if you by predominantly, you mean every single one for 8 years. Yeah, that's predominant.
Because, there are no other people that live in this town. So Justice Elena Kagan, on behalf of the dissenting minority, wrote that the town's practice violated the norm of religious equality, given the constitutional notion that public institutions belong no less to the Buddhist or Hindu than to the Methodist or Episcopalian. I think it was very well said that the government is for everybody. And if you pick somebody and constantly, without allowing anyone else, that you're basically choosing, the government is choosing the religion, which goes against the Constitution. What do you think of that?
Well, I urge everybody to read the decision. Just like the Kitzmiller case about creationism in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
These things are actually pretty entertaining sometimes. And this was an interesting read to see where they're coming from. And one thing that intrigued me about it, and we'll be talking about this at some length. We're going to have Dave Muscato, the communications director for American Atheist, is going to be on. And then we're going to have Rob Boston back on the show, the communications director for Americans United, and see how the various organizations around the country are responding to this. But I do urge people to read the decisions to see where they're coming from. One interesting thing I noted in this, and by the way, you called them what'd you call them, the five five justices who voted for it, the usual five. I call them the usual suspects.
Yeah, the usual suspects. I mean, they're all Catholic males.
5 Catholic males.
Except for my favorite justice there, Sotomayor. She is Catholic in name, but she voted in the other side, in the right side.
Well, these 5 Catholic males who are the same ones who brought us Citizens United, and just a number of other just horrible decisions they've done. This is clearly a group with an agenda.
Yes.
And you got to wonder who's driving this agenda. And it looks to me like it's a foreign theocracy is driving this agenda. You know,
the Vatican.
They appear to be taking their cues from the Vatican. And they're just unapologetic. Just,
you know, we've gone a long way. You remember when Kennedy was elected, how he had to go in front of the cameras, in front of the public to say, I'm not being driven by my religion. I'm here to serve. I'm here to protect everybody, equality for everybody. Yeah. And assure that his Catholicism was not going to get in the way.
Right.
Boy, have the pendulum swung the other way.
Has it ever. And now we got 5 people clearly working on a Catholic agenda.
Now, this was planned, of course, way back when we had Bush appointing a lot of these people. Right. So it's really important to see the long reach that even some boneheaded people in government have even after they've gone for a long time.
Right. Yeah. That speaks to the legacy of whoever gets to appoint justices on the Supreme Court. And sadly, the one thing that George W. Bush, I can't use my usual name for him. One thing he did was load it up with people who were there to kill Roe. It's basically what they're there for.
But you know what?
And everything that comes with it.
He has an accomplice.
Yeah.
Obama.
Well,
Obama was going, for the winning side. Mm-hmm. They were pushing for the winning side, and it just baffles me as to why him being a constitutional lawyer and seeing that separation eroding. I think above all, he is a politician. That
they would stand with the theocrats, that the administration would stand with the theocrats, the far right on this. It's appalling. So as a result of this,
less than 3 days after the Supreme Court made its boneheaded rule, a Florida resident named Chas Stevens, he decided to put the ruling to the test. He wrote a letter to the mayor of Deerfield Beach City, that says that asked them to allow him as a Satanist to do a prayer. Mm-hmm. And he wrote to a couple of other officials asking them to allow him to do a Satanist prayer. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, did the decision say that one reason they voted this way was because the government cannot and should not be looking at the content of prayers to decide whether they're this or that, and that therefore the neutrality here is to allow the Christians to do all the prayer?
Right. Yeah, the one thing they were trying to do with this, and the same thing that we have out in Loudoun County here, is the one thing that they were definitely going to accomplish was to continue the Christian prayers. That was the main thing. But here they have to
explain
basically,
something.
And they have to let other people be tokens.
Yes.
We have to let other people talk if we have to, if that's what we have to do to continue the Christian prayers. In government, in a government situation, in this totally inappropriate venue, then that's what we will do. That's basically their position.
Well, I'm hoping that this fellow, Chas Stevens, I hope that he succeeds, because I think, a lot of the commentary that I saw from the people online and the Christians online was saying, hey, look, guys, you atheists are too thin-skinned. You don't like the prayer, get out, leave the room and come back when the prayer is done, which is crazy. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I like to see how thick their skin is when a Satanist comes and does a satanic prayer and see how that.
Or when an atheist gets
the mic. But I think that they might be more offended by the Satanists, because atheists, we say, well, we don't believe in one side or the other, but a Satanist will come and say, yeah, Satan is the right guy because he only kills like 10 people in the Bible versus the 3 million that God kills.
Who's the bad guy?
Who's the bad guy there?
What would be interesting here would be if the Bible offered some guidance on prayer. Are you aware of any?
Let's see what the Bible has to say about prayer in public. I'm surprised the Christians didn't bring this up at the Supreme Court.
This was not part of their...
Matthew chapter 6, verse 5 says, I think this is Jesus talking, mm-hmm. And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites. They love to pray standing in the synagogues and in the corners of the streets in public, that they may be seen by others. Indeed, I say unto you, they already have received their reward. Amen.
Amen.
And yet they can't follow their own stupid book.
Yeah, and we're looking at you, Supreme Court. So I believe that we have some other news too.
All right, let's
Carrie?
see. Might be
Oh, well, maybe not quite yet. But,
not quite yet. We'll have. So we have. We're going to be having our first guest in a few minutes. Dave Muscato.
Dave Muscato, the communications director for American Atheists. See, he's waiting on cue there.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave. Yeah, he'll be joining us in just a minute.
Excellent. And I mean, every group right now out there, Freedom from Religion Foundation, the American Humanist, I mean, every secular group is stunned by this. I think it was so unexpected.
Well, it's such a reversal. I mean,
it's going backwards.
It went way backwards.
1950s, welcome back.
Right. When we talk about, I gave a speech on here several weeks ago about how we're winning. You know, but a win is 3 steps forward. Three steps forward and 2 steps back. Well, this is two to 3 steps back right here.
Well, the only thing that I can say, some of the good news is that when you mentioned that we're winning, is that there are far more secular people out there that are outspoken, and hopefully that will change the perception as they have with gays. You know, so maybe the Supreme Court will say that if you look in history, the Supreme Court before has. When slavery was in place, they voted for slavery a few times before they actually got smart enough to decide that slavery was not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
So,
despite the fact that it is spoken of glowingly in the Bible.
Bible does a great job.
Yeah.
You know, so I think we might be ready to talk to our guest.
No, maybe not.
Maybe not.
I believe. We do
now
have other news.
Okay, yeah, then we'll come to Dave Muscato. Sorry, Dave.
Gary.
A priest in Poland has stirred some controversy with his belief that toys made and sold by the Lego company are satanic, and that they are in some way partly responsible for what he sees as a loss of moral character in today's youth. In remarks made for Polish parents concerning the toy line, Father Slawomir Kostriwa said friendly fellows have been replaced by dark monsters. These toys can have a negative effect on children. They can destroy their souls and lead them to the dark side. To be fair to the Reverend, Lego does offer Star Wars themed toys. However, Father Slawomir also has a problem with Lego's Monster Fighter line of toys, citing a study by New Zealand's University of Canterbury, which found that the expressions on Lego's toys have grown angrier in appearance over the years. Father Slawomir said, facial expressions may lead to confusion between good and evil. It appears that good suffer in battle, and the villains have a face showing satisfaction with their evil deeds. When asked about the Reverend's opinion, psychologist Monica Filipowska said, these are just blocks. Linking them to Satan is just wrong, and all that will happen is that children will be afraid of them now. An Oregon couple faces first and second degree manslaughter charges stemming from the death of their daughter due to complications resulting from type 1 diabetes, a generally treatable condition. Travis and Winona Rossiter, the parents of deceased 12-year-old Sybil Rossiter, belong to the Church of the Firstborn that is part of a network of over 100 similar churches in 20 states which forego medical treatment in lieu of faith healing. The church shuns members who turn to modern medicine, believing that trusting doctors and science demonstrates a lack of trust in the Lord. Unfortunately for the Rossiters, in March of 2011, the Oregon State Legislature passed a law which voided reliance on faith healing as a defence against manslaughter charges when the victim is under 18 years of age. Several church members have been convicted of negligent homicide and manslaughter, including several members of the Rossiters' own family. The Rossiters have 2 other children who are currently under the care of Department of Human Services. The suspended pastor at Troy, Michigan Catholic Church and the parish's former office manager have been indicted on charges that between them they embezzled over $700,000 in parish funds. Among other specific accusations, 67-year-old Reverend Edward Belzac and 69-year-old Janice Verschuren are accused of diverting nearly $110,000 from a bank account belonging to St Thomas More Catholic Church in order for the pastor to make a down payment on a condo in Palm Beach, which he bought from the office manager in 2005. In another charge from 2006, Belzac is accused of intercepting $420,204.52 bequeathed by a deceased parishioner identified as EM, which was intended for the needs of the church, but which the pastor spent on himself. Several of the pastor's former flock stand in support of their suspended mentor, who is still collecting his regular paycheck from the Detroit diocese. They have even gone so far as to establish a website declaring their pastor's innocence with a frequently asked questions section which answers many of the charges against the accused embezzler. Conspicuously absent from the FAQ is the answer to how does a pastor earning less than $30,000 a year afford a $110,000 down payment on a Florida condo?
This is Richard Dawkins. Doing commercials is unfamiliar territory for me, but I'm inviting you to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, on Fairfax Public Access every Sunday. Each week the hosts tackle wishful thinking, religion, pseudoscience, and the harm they cause, with a combination of facts, humour, and community involvement. They challenge believers to defend their faith and give you, the skeptic, a voice. With live call-ins for viewers and streaming on the World Wide Web, there's never a dull moment. Don't wait, look at them now on Facebook and YouTube, and remember to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, or there'll be hell to pay.
So how do you like that? Legos?
Legos,
evil?
come on.
You know hell is full of Legos.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And a priest behaving badly and another faith healing.
Where have we ever seen that before?
Yeah,
A priest
right.
misbehaving? Well, at least he wasn't raping some kid.
Right.
At
least that.
At least that. Well,
Okay.
So are we ready for our guest?
We got Dave Muscato.
Hello.
Ready to come on.
Dave.
Welcome, Dave. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm doing
Yeah,
well.
thanks for coming out on a Sunday.
Sure,
It's
no
Mother's
problem.
Day.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, before we get started, I have to, one of your big fans from Facebook, her name is Liz. She asked me to, well, she didn't ask me, I volunteered to say hello for her on the air. So hello from Liz. And so now you can go on Facebook and find out, which of the many Liz's it is. She'll let you know. Anyway.
So Dave, are you as happy about this Supreme Court decision as we are?
Probably. Yeah. This is total bull. I mean, and actually, I noticed that earlier you were quoting Matthew 6:5. Actually, I think the next one says it even better. Matthew 6:6.
Yeah.
But when you pray, go into your closet, close the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. You can't be more clear than that. This is Jesus explicitly telling people the proper way to pray if they want to follow him, and this is explicitly what the Supreme Court is not doing, which is fine because it's not supposed to be specific to Christianity. But the people backing this up are Christians. I think we all know that.
Sure.
And I mean, as far as the Satanist prayer, I mean, the guy who's doing that, I'm glad that he's making a point. I support him in this. Last year, he was a Pastafarian when he put up for Christmas the Pastafarian Festivus pole that he said was part of his religion. And he has since converted to Satanism, which, I think this is great. I kind of want to see where this goes. But
maybe a can of worms out there.
Yeah, it's really neither of those are the right answer. We don't want a Satanist prayer or a Christian prayer.
Yeah, well, I think if we show how ridiculous it is,
right.
all these prayers, eventually somebody would say, might as well just not have anything. And
yes,
they'll
exactly.
see reason finally.
Which was the one thing they should have done and the one thing they didn't consider for a second.
Not for a second.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Dave, one question.
Sure.
So having the decision made by these religious judges, how is that any different than having, say, KKK judges judging a racism case?
I mean, it's really, I don't necessarily want to make the comparison there, but the point is the same, right? If you can't leave your religion at home, then you shouldn't be on the Supreme Court. We live in a secular society as far as the way our government is run. It's fine if you want to be religious at home, but when you're making law explicitly under the First Amendment of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, we have separation of religion and government. I think that's pretty clear. I thought it was pretty clear.
Yeah, it's.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say it's really interesting to see how a lot of different groups are taking this. Now, what do you think is going to be the immediate effect in places, in public places now over the next year, for instance?
I think a lot of city councils that were out of deference to non-religious people or afraid of lawsuits not having prayers are going to start having them. I think that a lot of people are going to celebrate having prayers even more forcefully, that we're doing that already out of defiance of people who didn't want it there. I think it's disgusting. I think it's shameful, and I hope those people realize that they're being childish.
It is shameful, yeah. And right here in Virginia, we've already seen 10 minutes after this thing came down, a city guy from Roanoke here in Virginia said, we're going to be doing Christian prayers exclusively. Nobody else need apply. As a matter of fact, he's written an article saying that this is a Christian nation and no other religion even has a right to exercise in this country. So we got this immediately.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it just took no time at all for them to start coming out of the woodwork.
One of the Supreme Court justices in an interview, I can't remember which one was, I'm sorry, said that in his opinion, really, that this only applies on the federal level anyway, and that if individual states want to declare state religions, that the Constitution doesn't actually prohibit that. I obviously disagree with this, but that's kind of what the 14th Amendment is all about. But this is a mess, and I'm really disappointed in our justice system right now.
Now, Dave, how do you think this needs to be fought? I mean, can you tell me what American Atheist is doing, and also what you think everyone else is going to be doing in order to say, is there a way to overturn this or modify it, or is this it? We're done and never to be looked back again?
Overturning and modifying Supreme Court decisions is virtually impossible. I mean, the only thing that can do it is the Supreme Court, as far as I understand. I'm not an attorney. But I really don't know what the next step is. This isn't our case. We signed an amicus brief with this case, but I'm not sure what we're doing about this specifically, or really what can be done at this point, other than the type of thing that's going on in Florida as far as submitting prayers from competing organizations and faiths to make a point that if you're going to do this, you're opening it up to everybody.
Well, I think we are going to see a lot of other groups, including locally, participating in the invocation process.
Mm-hmm. But the question will become, what happens when they deny you? No, you're not Christian. No, we're not going to let you.
Then it's a whole different problem. Yeah. And maybe that gets to the Supreme Court.
Because I mean, it's sort of what happened. I mean, they did in Greece. They did allow other prayers after they complained. Mm-hmm. They allowed other prayers, but now they have no reason. I mean, for it to go back all the way back to the Supreme Court, it's going to take. I mean, look, it took from 2007 until now.
Right.
It's going to take a long time, and so I think we're going to see a lot of abuse between now and then.
Right. Well, as I said earlier, for 8 years they had exclusively Christian prayers, and when they were pressured on it a little bit, they had 2 people come in over the next 2 years or something. And but now we're seeing, like the guy here in Roanoke, who are unapologetic. They're just going to do the Christian thing, period. They believe that they have a license now to do that. If they can make any meager excuse to say, we're not going to go outside the city limits, or we don't have to. So
Dave, let me ask you something. Do you think that this decision is going to unify groups? Is American Atheist going to start working with some religious groups now in order to stem, because minority groups, Buddhists and so forth, they're going to be suffering on this. Is American Atheist ready to join with other religions in order to fight this?
We don't have any direct plans to do that sort of thing. It's rare, possibly unprecedented, that we work together with religious groups, just as kind of the attitude that we have about this sort of thing. We're confrontationists, not accommodationists. I sympathize with religious groups that are excluded the same way that we're excluded, but we don't have any direct plans to work together with other groups in that capacity.
Yeah, as I understand it also, you talked about getting something back to the Supreme Court. It is hard, and they have to agree
Right,
to
they
hear
have
a case.
to.
But the legislature can make a law. Like, you know, believe it or not judging from the last 2 years, they actually can make a law saying that, you know, defining this or limiting it in some way, and then the Supreme Court would ultimately be asked to decide on that too. So the most immediate way is law, and of course we realize that's not going to happen. So
now, so do you see other governments, you know, local government, municipal, and everything, taking sides? Some saying no, we're going to follow the Constitution, and others say we're going to follow Jesus. Or I mean, it sounds to me like we're about to start a culture war of the 1950s, except that this time the atheists and the non-believers are going to be fighting back, probably.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate. I know some places, even though the Supreme Court has ruled that there's nothing unconstitutional about the way that Greece handled this, some communities have decided not to do prayers, period, just out of respect for other communities that aren't being represented, even though they would be allowed to do that. And I think that's really the best way to do it. I don't understand what's so difficult about simply praying before the meeting starts and doing it as an official part of the agenda, or even just doing it at home before you get there. If you think that in order to do your role as a city council person, that's necessary. It doesn't make sense to me why this is such a big issue, why they're pushing so hard for it.
It does reveal an agenda, a Christianist agenda, part of which is to blur that line between church and state, and to act like it's just normal. In reading this decision, which I did do, I read it, they didn't mention the Lemon Test at all, which says that a law can't have an explicitly religious purpose, which this
that
clearly
if there's no
does.
secular way, if there's no secular reason for a law, that then the law is ridiculous.
But they ignored that. They never mentioned it, except in one of the dissents, lemon is mentioned. And clearly their intent is to, well, their justification was, it's always been this way. Well, basically they're saying, you haven't managed to stop us this long, it's now tradition, you know, and we're just going to keep doing it because nobody can stop us.
Tradition seems to be one of the arguments that they used in order to put this through. Wasn't slavery tradition also?
Indeed.
Women not voting tradition. A lot of
And actually, this is something that we bring up quite a bit. When people ask why we get engaged in certain lawsuits, one of the most frequent questions we get is, how do you decide which lawsuits to pursue? And sometimes they're not the most egregious violations of the Constitution that we take up as a suit. Sometimes we take up things that seem pretty minor. But part of the reason that we choose one over another is we don't want to establish a tradition, and we want to make it clear that we are against something before people can start using that argument. If somebody had sued about this or made a stink about it, at least a long time ago when this originally started happening, they wouldn't be able to use that argument. So it's important to keep in mind that you need to speak up if you see something like this that's inappropriate as soon as it starts to happen, whether we're talking about school prayer or we're talking about a Ten Commandments monument that's going in. There was a ruling about a Ten Commandments monument, I think it was in Kentucky, that said, this is fine because it's been here for 50 years and nobody complained till so far, so what's the big deal? But yeah, that's something important, I think. Tradition is a stupid reason to do something. Just because you've been doing it a long time does not mean it was the right thing to do.
Just because nobody managed to stop you before now doesn't mean it's okay to keep doing it.
Yeah, I had some people refer to it as the QWERTY keyboard effect. You know, the QWERTY keyboard is very inefficient because it was designed that way, and then once we were able to get typewriters that didn't get stuck, now everyone's accustomed to it, and so that's the argument that they have, that is, they're now accustomed. But one of the things that kind of surprised me was to see how shocked every secular organization was when the news came out. It seems that the secular movement was caught with their pants down on this decision. And I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I rarely do this, but just to give you an idea of how we responded to it, I mean, I didn't even have a statement prepared for if we lost this. I didn't think that was going to happen. And it was very close. It was 5-4. But I thought, even though we have a fairly religious Supreme Court right now, that this was not going to happen. And I caught with our pants down is, I think, a pretty good way of putting it. This is absurd and very surprising.
That would have been okay if we were the Catholic Church.
Yeah. But it's, it shouldn't have been too surprising because it's the same 5-4 who brought us Citizens United and other ridiculous decisions. It's always the same 5.
Now, do you think that this is going to open the door for the people that are saying, hey, now we know how these judges are going to vote, let's bring abortion in, let's bring in all these other topics that we know these justices are going to vote in our side, and while we have majority, let's do it. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that people are considering. I know that as part of our legal strategy, we are not pursuing some cases as far as we want to right now, while this court is sitting, because of that issue. It's something that needs to be taken into account for a good legal strategy. You want to make sure that you're going before a court that you understand how they're going to rule or what the likelihood is of the outcome, as far as how you make your arguments and when you make your arguments. Okay. And the court is against us right now.
Yeah, they are. Dave, appreciate you coming on the show. We're going to need to cut away from you now. We've got Rob Boston from Americans United coming on.
Okay.
Thank you so much for giving us your opinion on this.
Have a great one,
Thanks
guys.
for taking part of your most. Oh, one quick question. Saw Dave on MSNBC this week. Is that? I think that's the first time he's been on MSNBC. He's on Fox a lot, but
I'm not sure it's the first time. This is, I think, the first time he's been on Ronan Farrow's show. And there's a clip of it. If you go to our Facebook page, at facebook.com/American Atheist, you can watch the clip of that.
One quick note on that. Could you tell us a little bit about the announcement that you made, was it today or yesterday, about Atheist TV?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is a project we've been working on for quite a while. We are very excited to make this announcement public. Atheist TV is unprecedented. It's the first time that there's a TV channel explicitly devoted to atheism and atheist topics. This is something that we need, that there's a void that is being filled for this. 300 plus religious channels on Roku service through television, and not a single specifically secular program. So that's what we're doing. And,
excellent.
All
right, thank you.
That's
really great. We look forward to that. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Well, that was nice. I mean, there's so much to talk about this that we have. I mean, one of the things that bothered me was Justice Kennedy saying that this was a ceremonial thing. No big deal. Don't worry. Why why do you have such thin skins, kind of thing? I mean, that was the implication.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to see it when because this is going to happen, when a Satanist goes and does his a Satanist religion, see how thick their skin is going to be.
Yeah, or
how ceremonial.
The big ones, see how much they're going to like. I almost hate to say this. It sounds a little racist, but Islam. When they're confronted with Islam on the board of directors in a local county government.
Well, and that's it. Everybody's religion sucks except mine.
Yeah, everybody's is bad.
Everybody's is wrong. Because and the justice, what they've said is, majority rules, when that hasn't been the case ever. The purpose of the Constitution and the purpose of the law.
The majority can't.
So the majority doesn't take advantage of the minorities.
The majority cannot defeat the rights of another citizen.
Exactly, and the rules. I mean, the laws are the same for everybody, but now is saying no, it's not the same if you're not a Christian. No. In a particular town. So it's going to be very interesting to see if we're going to have. What kind of issues that's going to bring up. While we get our next guest, I wanted to ask you, what, if anything, do you think our side did wrong in fighting this thing all the way to the Supreme Court? I
hate to be a cynic, but I think there was nothing we could do right. I think facts didn't matter with these judges, with these 5. The fact that they absolutely studiously ignored the lemon test. Never mentioned it, never cited it.
Could that be a fault in our side not bringing it up?
I don't.
Because
I'm
thinking, that would have been. I mean, it seems that test came from them, didn't it?
The lemon test came from the Supreme Court 30 years ago or so, and makes sense to me. Can't have a
lot
law
of common sense
based on religion or for strictly religious purposes, and a couple of other provisions. It was 3 prongs, and I forget them.
It's really easy, of course, to be. It's really easy to do. Back. What is it called? A Monday back quarterback.
Yeah, a Monday morning quarterback.
That's it. I don't play football, but they, where you look back and you say, oh yeah, this is what went wrong. But I think that if we're not careful as to what things are brought in, the case that maybe they'll bring back the case from Pennsylvania on intelligent design and bring it to the Supreme Court.
They might.
They figured, hey, time to appeal. I don't know if there's a limit for that or not, but it seems to me that now they have free game to do anything they want.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm interested in doing is finding out, what lessons we can learn from this. And I'm hoping that the different secular groups in the country that work together and sit back and maybe in some of the conferences that we have and say, what is it that we did wrong? How, what is it that we can do better? And do a lessons learned kind of thing. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I do with projects, any project that I do, whether it goes well, especially with the ones that go badly, to say, okay, what can we do to avoid this again? And bring up, a battery of tests. Now, I know that there was a lot of amicus things that were supplied by different organizations. But I think a unified strategy by everybody might be a better thing.
Well, I know that Americans United, I believe, has a program they're going to start to counter some of this, and also Freedom from Religion Foundation. I believe when we do get Rob Boston on, he'll talk about some of that. But a coordinated effort, and to not make it easy for them. Don't let them just have an easy win here.
Because it makes me wonder if. The gay issue is still not done. There are a lot of states that are still doing a lot of stuff. I wonder if they're seeing also this as an opportunity to say it's a violation of their religion, allowing gay marriage. And since they're Christian the majority, why not?
And speaking of gays and atheists and praying, it seems to me like the gays and the atheists need to come out of the closet, and the prayers need to go back in the closet.
Just like the Bible says.
Just like the Bible says. Read your Bibles.
Read your Bible.
I'm telling you,
we need more atheists.
There.
We need more atheists. Please read your Bibles. Right. Yeah, it's incredible to see how far things have gone so far. And I don't know, I worry a lot.
And it's just another brick in the wall, or another brick out of the wall or something. But, it's what I call the creeping theocratization of America. One little decision here, and with a clear agenda to support Christianity and Christianism.
Yes. Well, something that was in the news this week also, that because it got opaqued by this big news, was another loss in Massachusetts this week, where the One Nation Under God was struck down. Well, it was not. In other words, the party that was bringing it on as they wanted to be removed lost in Massachusetts. In the Supreme Court. In Massachusetts. I mean, I can see if it was Texas or Oklahoma or something like that. So part of, it's actually 2 losses this week. When you said, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Okay, it was a bad week.
It was a bad week. This was one of the worst weeks we've had so far.
Enjoy that, Supreme Court.
Yeah.
It won't always be like that. Do
you think that there's going to be a Supreme Court judge that will hang its robes before Obama leaves?
I don't think so. I think they're hanging on by their fingernails. But I can think of 5 who I would be happy if they resigned tomorrow.
Well, I'm still proud to say that Sotomayor is still doing an okay job.
Doing great. Kagan's doing great. The 4 out of those 5 decisions seem to be doing great. I believe we have Rob Boston with us now. Rob, can you hear us?
Almost there.
Yeah.
Almost there.
I can see you, cannot hear you.
Well, we have many, as I said before, while we get him, I wanted to, and I didn't get a chance to ask, I did see that David Silverman did announce a a way to join other groups and for us. So for most people that are watching the show, I encourage you to not just be a member of one group, but be a member of as many groups as possible, because we're all diverse people. We all have different ways of thinking, and different groups cater to different sets of people. But we're all not exclusive to one or the other. So I encourage people to go as often as possible to other groups and talk about these issues, because we need to bring up these issues all the time.
Absolutely. Let's try Rob again. Can we hear Rob now? Rob?
Hey, gentlemen.
Oh, there
You go. Hi,
Happy
how are
Mother's
you?
Day. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're not in trouble for this.
No, this is fine.
Okay, bad week for us out here, all the separationists.
Give us your take on it.
Well, it's not a good decision. It's a very bad decision. It's a decision that promotes a majority rules version of prayer. There's really not anything good to say about it. Americans United will be announcing tomorrow a multi-pronged plan to try to respond to this. Part of it will look at the language in the majority opinion that Justice Kennedy penned that indicates that there are still some types of prayers that could be problematic. So we'll be looking at that and trying to get a response out there, but it's going to be a rough period. There's no doubt about that.
It is. Did you happen to notice that they failed utterly to acknowledge the Lemon Test in their decision on this?
I mean, we're wondering why that wasn't kind of brought up.
It's been on life support, judicial life support, for quite a while. It was never something that the conservative bloc was very fond of to begin with. And I think what they're essentially doing is they're ditching it, they're tossing it out without explicitly saying so.
Yeah.
But the problem here really goes back to 1983 when the Supreme Court handed down the ruling in the Marsh case. Marsh, as you might remember, allowed taxpayer-funded chaplains in state legislatures. And the court kind of carved out this exemption from separation of church and state, saying that these chaplains had been around for a long time and they were going to say they were okay. So now they've extended that to local government as well. And the really sad thing about this ruling on Monday was that we could not get one justice, not even one justice, to say that it was time to reopen Marsh and look at Marsh, or say that Marsh had been wrongly decided. When Marsh was decided in 1983, it was a 6-3 decision. So there were at least 3 justices back then who would have not allowed those chaplains. We can't even get one today to say that that's wrong.
Right.
So what would you, we were just discussing this a minute ago, what lessons learned do you see at this point? I know it's pretty early, we're still licking our wounds, but what do you see as lessons learned in this, or is there anything that we could have done differently?
Look, we're all nonpartisan organizations, we're nonprofits, we have to be careful about our involvement in politics. But remember how justices get on the Supreme Court, and remember how federal judges get their jobs. They are appointed by the president and then either confirmed or denied by the Senate on an up and down vote. The House doesn't play a role. So you're talking about elected officials, the president and the Senate, deciding the caliber of the men and women that are going to sit on our nation's courts, including our highest court. If we have people putting extremely conservative justices on those courts, well, it's no surprise we're going to get extremely conservative decisions. You should read if you haven't already, the concurring opinion by Justice Clarence Thomas, which is an absolute disgrace and a tragedy, where he actually argues that states should have the right to establish and set up official religions. It's as if the 14th Amendment doesn't even exist in his world. That's the kind of justice you get sometimes if you allow these ultra-conservatives to have control of our political system. So we have to do this through legal channels. As I said, we're all nonpartisan legally under the IRS code. But people do need to be aware that when they are in the voting booth, they're not just electing senators and presidents, they're also, in a sense, electing judges.
Yeah, and it is scary that the most frail and possibly vulnerable justice on the Supreme Court is one of the liberals. And I hate to think what happens if the Republicans do gain control of the White House and the Senate and the House. What we're going to end up with the Supreme Court, we're going to just end up with open theocratic advocates. I can only imagine.
Now, do you think that religion, the smaller religions, all the other different religions, you think they've realized that they've actually lost also? We were talking about Buddhists and all the non-Christian religions that are out there. Do you see any further expansion or unifications of Americans United with these groups in order to have more influence and better education of the people out there?
Well, a decision like this certainly should be a wake-up call to all the non-Christian faiths out there, as well as humanism and non-religious philosophies. We all need to be banding together and coordinating our response. One of the things we're going to be doing in Americans United, announcing this Monday, is we're going to be looking for ways to get the non-Christian organizations, the humanist organizations, the atheist organizations, pagans, Wiccans, all these different groups to come together and demand their right to offer invocations. Remember, in the town of Greece, New York, the question really centered on this town's particular approach to legislative prayer. And they, in theory, had this open door policy where they would allow anyone to recite a prayer, and most of them were Christian because they argued, well, most of the people in town are Christian, so that's why we're getting all these Christian prayers. So what we're going to need to do is to force real pluralism into some of these communities, to bring in more Buddhists and Muslims and Hindus and atheists and humanists, pagans and Wiccans, and say, well, we would like our turn at the microphone. And those individuals should give inclusive invocations, not the ones that are being given by the fundamentalist Christians now in this town that extol Christianity and make others feel like outsiders. Let them set the stage and show, here's how it really ought to be done, in a way that brings everybody in and doesn't make some folks feel like second-class citizens.
But wouldn't that sort of go away from the point? I mean, if they go and if a Satanist goes and does a prayer that excludes the Christians or even condemns Christians or whatever, or other non-Satanists, wouldn't it show the Christians and would show everybody? Because all of a sudden you'll have a bunch of very pissed off people, because that usually is the case. If it's Christianity, it's fine. When it's not, then all hell breaks loose. Wouldn't it make more sense to make it so they can see the other side of the coin and make them see what they're doing by showing them what they're doing?
I'm going to urge that we take the high road on this one, that we can show that there is a better way to do these things. I mean, obviously, we would all prefer that there be no prayers before these government meetings at all. But in this case, we were hemmed in by that old decision I mentioned from 1983, the Marsh decision, which made it very difficult for us to get this case into the court and argue that anything other than non-sectarian prayer. That's what we had to kind of argue for. So I would say that if we can show that there's a better way here to offer something that's more inclusive, that respects the rights of everybody, maybe that will cause some of these extreme fundamentalists out there to realize that well, they're on the outs. And the average person will look at that and say, that's not the kind of invocation I want to hear at my community. Someone that's excluding others, that's denigrating others, that's putting their religion up above everybody else's. It will be a long road, gentlemen. We should not fool ourselves here. Yeah. We're in for a very difficult time over the next several years, I'm afraid, on this issue. And I do have concerns about this court and what other types of issues they might take up and what other bricks they may knock out of the wall of separation. This is a radical court.
It is.
And now they're emboldened.
And when have you ever seen a more activist court?
Yeah.
But talk about the high road. I hate having to be the adult in the room. I really hate that. We're going to need to break for about 2 minutes. If you don't mind hanging on, and we got a couple more questions for you, Rob.
Absolutely.
But Carrie, do we have some announcements? No.
It seems like not.
Apparently,
let's go on.
Apparently not. We'll continue on. Okay, I was saying how much I hate being an adult and having to take the high road. I think there might be a place for a little street theater in some of these invocations, but maybe try both and see what works.
Now, one thing that Americans United has done always very well is to work with religious groups because we're all for the separation of church and state, and so we recently asked American Atheists, and they said, well, we've never been very good at playing with others when it comes in this space. But it seems to me that with this decision, you may start gaining some new allies. Because the friend of the enemy, what is it? My enemy.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
So although we may not agree on the deities and so forth, we do agree that the wall provides protection more to the smaller religions than to even the atheists themselves.
And maybe get them to recognize that this is absolutely endorsement. As I said earlier, there's one thing they were going to make sure happened. That was that the Christian prayers proceeded as always.
And they just look for the excuse.
So it is obvious endorsement, it is obvious Christianization attempt.
What do you think?
Yes, well, I think that's important. And I also would urge you not to forget that there are conservative Christians who agree with us on this. I've been reading some columns by some thoughtful Christians who we may not agree with on a lot of other issues, but they do believe that this type of ceremonial prayer, and that is a phrase used by Justice Kennedy in the majority opinion. These conservative Christians, the more thoughtful ones, believe that this ceremonial prayer isn't very valuable from a theological standpoint. And they have kind of pointed to the countries that have tended to rely on this type of ceremonial prayer tend to be nations that don't have a very robust religious life. I mean, if you look at the Church of England, it performs a ceremonial role in that country, but the church attendance rates are pretty abysmal there. So even some conservative Christians are expressing concern about this ruling and saying that, this type of situation where the government just enlists a minister to come in and recite prayer for a while, that's not authentic religion. And a better answer would be, if you really feel the need for spiritual guidance on the county council before you decide what to do about the potholes, well, get together with like-minded individuals beforehand and say your prayers in private. After all, as I'm sure both of you know, that's what Jesus recommended. Don't make a big show of your faith. Don't pray on the streets where you'll be seen by others, but pray silently in private, and God will reward you. So I think there is actually an argument to be made from conservative Christianity that can be pretty powerful if we're willing to reach out to those individuals.
Well, yeah, and we agree. We know that there are people on the same side with us on separation.
Yeah,
but you're
because it's a political thing. It's protecting people's rights. I mean, I'm hoping that if I get a chance to do one of these prayers, that's exactly what I would do: is read Matthew 6, 5, and 6. To say, just read it in there to everyone present so they know that they're not supposed to be doing this according to their own religion.
Yeah, I have actually read that in Loudoun County at the Board of Directors meeting. It didn't have much of an effect, but perhaps hearing it often enough and being confronted with this. And you pointed to something too, the fact that they could pray beforehand, they could pray at home, they can pray silently where they sit, but that's not what they choose to do. They choose to make a show out of it. They choose to blur that line between separation between church and state.
Make others uncomfortable.
And to make others uncomfortable and act like there's no coercion involved in this when there clearly is, and act like there's no endorsement when there obviously is.
Yeah.
And
so
I mean,
I've been in places
that?
when they say, I've been in Chamber of Commerce meetings where they say, everyone get up, stand up, bow your heads, and we're going to pray. And when I don't, and I stay sitting down, eating or drinking or doing whatever, I get comments and people attacking me saying, hey, you're being disrespectful to my religion.
Yeah.
And it's what they've done is saying, you have to show some sort of respect to an idea, a religious idea.
And of course, they force you to sit through it or excuse yourself without giving you, there's not an organized, they're not making an announcement. Yeah. All those who would like to, please leave and we'll come get you when the religion portion is over.
That doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way at all. So
there's an interesting point along those lines. Justice Kennedy, in the majority opinion, sort of blithely dismisses the concerns people have along those lines, where he says, well, they can just get up and leave the room. But I just was amazed when I read that, because it seems like he's disconnected from reality. A lot of these are small towns, communities, small cities. And if you're approaching the council because you want something, maybe a zoning variance, or maybe you want the sidewalks fixed in your neighborhood, you're not going to jeopardize your request and getting it by offending the council or angering them by walking out during the prayer. I mean, he acts as if there's all this activity during the prayer and people are coming and going and leaving at will. And that's just not the way it is in many of these small towns. I used to be a newspaper reporter, and in Pennsylvania I covered a lot of small town councils and borough councils and so on. And it was not like that at all. And if you got up and left during the prayer, everybody would know what you were doing. And certainly that would jeopardize any kind of request you might have or business before the council. So most people are not going to take that chance. There's just so much about this opinion that is offensive, but that detachment from reality.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
you know, as it was said, it's the same thing as separate but equal. You know, that's, you know, you can leave and come back later if you hear the gavel or something. Anyway,
but that sets you apart when
that
you do
sets you
that.
apart, and now you're no longer the same.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing as you know, the equality thing. Anyway, you know, thank you so much for being with us, Rob, today. We really appreciate the short notice and you coming on Mother's Day. We hope that you have the rest of the day really good, and thank you so much for being with us.
And by the way, Rob is also the author of a new book called Taking Liberties, and
Highly recommended.
I highly recommend it. I read it. It was a great book, and I hope that's going well for you. So.
Thanks. It is. It's a pleasure to be on with you, and have a good day. And we, as I said, we're going to continue to fight this thing. We are not just going to take this lying down. The Supreme Court may think that they've answered this question definitively, but they haven't. They've really just opened up a box, and we're going to continue to work on this issue, believe me.
Exactly. Well, let us know what we can do to help.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob, for coming on.
Bye.
So
Bye.
this is, I mean, it was very interesting. We could talk about this all day long. There are people from all walks of life that affects this. And I think Rob said it very well, that we are going to be, it's an open can of worms, and I think we're going to see a lot more cases that are going to clog our court systems.
Yeah.
Because atheists and non-believers of all kinds are no longer, non-Christians of all kinds are no longer going to take it down.
No.
I mean, I think one of the things that we've learned is that we need to speak up. I mean, everyone has seen the gay movement speak up and get benefits out of it. So a lot of suffering, but a lot of benefits also.
Right.
And we need to follow in the same footsteps.
Absolutely. They can't just have an easy victory here on such a grievous assault on our Constitution, the one that's supposed to make us all equal under the law regardless of our religion, and yet they've basically clearly thrown a bone to the Christianists in this country.
Yeah. It's incredible because what I've seen so far is that the number of people that are quiet also is starting to, you know, is less than it was before. And you remember the silence majority in the 60s that finally came out and said, you know, we need to take care of things here. So we need people to come out of the closet, to speak up, to say that they are.
Go talk to your county council or city council if they're doing this.
And support, and also support your local atheist group, your local secular group.
Okay, I guess that's all for us this week. Like us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube.
Send your donations.
Send